Well, I thought I'd try and record something up here in the workshop because I wasn't at all happy with the volume of the last two videos I made. Far too quiet. So if I hold the microphone here, and of course I've also I have purchased a camera from Amazon, and that should be okay, but I still have to unpack it and learn how to use it. I have a lot to do at the moment. I'm very busy and a little bit disinclined to do things, or tired, I suppose. Having put in an offer on a house in Blackpool, I now have to sell my own home. I've never done that before, and it's a little bit challenging. Apparently, I've already thrown away £10,000, my sister has informed me, because I offered the full price for the house, which one doesn't do. But it seemed to me that I had no money, and so if I didn't offer the full price, it wouldn't be secured. I don't understand these things, but now I have to choose an estate agent, and two have been round already, and a third is coming this week, and then put my own house on the market and decide on the price that I will accept. It's all very new to me, and of course, it's emotionally challenging as well, I suppose, because I'm leaving Birmingham behind after having lived here for 15 years, apart from two other times in my youth. I was born here, lived for 5 years, and then my mother and father returned when I was 16 and lived in just outside of Birmingham, but still in Birmingham really. And I lived with them for 2 years permanently, as I attended school and art college, 3 years actually. Art college was another year. But as soon as I could, I was out, and so I suppose I would have been 19 before I finally completely left. But I did have a period of living alone when I was younger. I was just 17, and I sort of ran away from home. I had that experience. I suppose my mother and father would have been a bit worried about me, but it didn't seem to be too bad. I telephoned them after a few days, but I think my younger sister, who's always been a great bonus and ally in my life, stood in for me and helped to assuage the wrath or the anxiety, perhaps, of my mother and father. Certainly my father would have been just, he would have had a different reaction. I learned quite a lot from him. I now know with hindsight, but it was difficult for me to appreciate when he was living, because there was a measure of enmity between us. It was an odd relationship. I didn't behave as he wished, but he didn't instruct me on how I should behave, really, but I knew it didn't please him. So it is with parents, I suppose, sometimes. And so life will take a new turn now. I'll be up in Blackpool among my own people. That was the main thing that emerged. My stay in Blackpool, I had about 7 days all in all, and I just enjoyed it immensely. Um, I enjoyed the sea air, the fine weather. We had some very good weather, and just the local vibe. Um, it's a great place because it's got the um, kind of white community, like as though a town in Yorkshire it may be. But the problem with many places of sort of that become white flight destinations, or where people sort of form these bourgeois, just middle class white societies, that a certain bigotry arises among the people, and I don't like it very much. Whereas in Blackpool, because of the constant tourism, there's a more um, cosmopolitan vibe, even though the population is 95% white. There's a gay quarter in town. Um, there are two theatres, and of course, so when the theatre people come, they bring theatre weirdness to the town, and it has some claim to fame because it is the place where Strictly Come Dancing is filmed, and I think it's considered to be the ballroom dancing capital of the world, certainly of Britain. So it's a strange mix. It's a little bit. It's got some corners that remind me of Brighton, which is a very different seaside town. Edinburgh, even. There's a slightly artsy corner, I think, but it's very slight. You have to look hard to find it because most of it is just the fun fair on the front. There's a big fun fair, and the shops and the endless nonsense that is sold and plastic rubbish and the illuminations along the front. Blackpool was developed, I think, as a distraction for the working classes. It was part of a bit of social engineering, and you could say perhaps it still is. The nearby industrial cities of Liverpool and Manchester and Preston and places like that, mainly, I think, would the idea was to give the people a week's holiday by the sea, and so a train line, I think, was installed to Blackpool. Blackpool was chosen as being the suitable area, I suppose, and they installed a fun fair on the beach, which used to flood in winter, I discovered, or in spring, before the sea defences were completed. So a lot of money was spent on preparing the town, and huge hotels were built along the front, and hordes of people started to descend or to ascend to Blackpool because it's north. So the whole town is designed as a distraction, but it is nonetheless a town in itself, and it has great beauty, I found. I travelled up the coast to Fleetwood and had dinner there, and I travelled over the river, I forget what it's called. I took the ferry to Knott End, which is a very nice little village, and I spent some time there also. And then missed the ferry to come back because I hadn't thought, because the tides are so unrelenting. The last ferry was I think at about 4:30, whereas I reached the slipway at 4:45. But I reached it together with two young people, um, maybe a couple, and very, very efficiently the fellow had telephoned an Uber to take us round the long way, and he suggested we split the cost, which I agreed readily to. And sure enough, the Uber turned up, driven by an Ishmaelite. Most of these services are in the hands of the Ishmaelite, even though in Blackpool I saw small knots of Asian or Muslim youths, but small, and they walked circumspectly. Obviously, they're aware of their surroundings, and I think that's an important matter. When I spoke to my Asian neighbour, Muslim lady, very nice, about Blackpool, she'd visited with her husband and her children fairly recently before me. And I said, well, why have you not thought of moving up there? Because they have a very small house. They need to buy another house, but the local prices are too high. And she said that she wouldn't feel comfortable living in. She said that she felt that there would be some resentment from the local people if she were to move up there. And I was interested to hear that, and I understood what she was saying, of course, but I pointed out it is prejudice, because I said it probably wouldn't be the way you describe it, because people are individuals. We can't be lumped together. But certainly, I understand also the problem is, you see, that one Asian family living in your road isn't is interesting, if you like. It's when another and then the houses they tend to congregate. They build their own communities, and that's something that I don't want to see happen, having witnessed it happen here. I'm happy to live alongside in other circumstances, shall we say, but the fact that they're taking over whole areas of the country is something that troubles me. And it's the Islamification process, which I think is extremely harmful, because Islam is a false religion. And there's no question of it. I'm sure people will be upset if they're Islamic when they hear me say that. But it's a pointless religion of works, as if the one true God needs people to kneel and face in a certain direction 5 times a day and repeat endless prayers. Not your own words, prayers that have been written for you. And the more times you say them, then the more appeased will be God, and the more your soul will be saved. Such absolute nonsense. Anybody can see that the creator of the universe, the creator of the world and the heaven, and the creator of everything that is in it, has no need of this kind of nonsense. You can't do anything. What are you going to do? He is our benefactor. We can only thank him and worship him in his majesty. And of course, from a documentary standpoint, the forgery is going to be the later document, isn't it? The Quran is not as old as the Bible. And it's a forgery, effectively, cooked up by Satan, I think, through the Catholic Church. I think that they had quite a hand in um, the career of the prophet and the writings. But these things can be done with great subtlety. So I don't want to see this wicked book spread across the land. I want to see it removed, in fact, as far as possible. And I want to see the Ishmaelite turn and understand and begin to have understanding. That's what I'd like to see. And I'll do anything that I can to promote that process as far as it's in my power. And I think very little is in my power, because Islamic religion is a cultural net, as it were. They are very much subject to the rule of the mosque and the rule of the um, ummah, or the Muslim community. There's a great deal of posturing and signaling that goes on, and it revolves around this ritualistic faith. I don't know how it's going to work. I mean, I was speaking to my neighbour quite freely. It's been good to speak to her of these things, because it's quite difficult to find somebody, to share these ideas with if they're a Muslim themselves. Of course, you don't want to offend people, or I don't want to, by telling them that their religion is false. They have to find that out for themselves. It's not my place. But you see, the deference a measure of deference that was evident in Blackpool from the few Ishmaelites with whom I interacted is increasingly lacking, you see, in my own town, because they view it as being their town, and so the tables are turned, really, and that's not so good. But if you look in the Bible at that strange incident where Jesus Christ was asked for miraculous healing by, I think, a Canaanitish woman, and he answered, is it good to take the food of the children of Israel and cast it to the dogs? And I think many people are quite shocked when they read those words of our Lord and Saviour. It seems quite prejudicial. But of course, ultimately, he did heal. Was it the woman's daughter, I think? And he did it because of her answer, that even the dogs can lick up the crumbs from under the table. You see, in her answer, she had accepted the primacy of Israel. She had accepted the position of the children of the promise. And I think this is what needs to be done. It's tricky territory, because, of course, it's not that we have any personal merit. We can be quite wicked, but nonetheless there is a spiritual veil that's been, or a spiritual garland, I suppose, that's been placed upon our head, and it won't be removed, and it must be seen and acknowledged. That's all I'm saying. I don't think it means that we can lord it over people or anything like that, but there must be recognition of the purpose of God. He's done this thing. We don't deserve it. But the more we realize that this thing exists, then the more we will be humbled, I believe, and the more we will praise and worship and have understanding and proceed um, to work in accordance with the will of God in everything, and to sort of emanate a Christ spirit in our community, which can then form, really begin to sort of generate love and understanding and peace. Those are the things that we all need, whether we be Hamites or Ishmaelites or whoever. But the book is important, and I'm afraid the Quran really needs to follow all those wicked books that have deceived humanity. Perhaps not to be burned. I don't know whether book burning is a useful thing, but certainly to be cast aside and another book to be placed upon the table in its stead. God bless.